Now, the other thing which I would like you over here to notice is the building which is behind you, what we call Al-Aqsa Mosque. And try to think of a building which would have functioned as a offices and a marketplace, where the Sanhedrins would have had their offices and the marketplace of the temple 2,000 years ago. Just try to remember that one. From the south, there used to be two gates which used to come up to the temple platform. These two gates from the south used to come underground. And you would be standing right now at the courts of the Gentiles. From here, look at the complex which is in front of you. The platform which is on the top, that's the temple. That's what you need to take in consideration. That's the temple. That's the Holy of the Holies over there. Over here stood a wall which was about 6 foot high, called the Sorek. On it, there used to be signs in Greek and Latin warning non-Jews from trespassing by the punishment of death. So let's go on. As if we're passing the Sorek, I want you actually to go on and try to remove everything which you see around you, every little stone, and let's go back all the way from scratch. This is the Temple Mount. This is the platform which we're standing on, surrounded by the Kidron, which is just there, where the Golden Dome is standing. It used to be a threshing floor. Remember the threshing floors?
Yes.
It used to be a threshing floor. Solomon comes, he puts the temple on the top over here, as I showed you at the model earlier, at the tunnels over there, and all this area over here, beyond these arches actually, that would have been left vacant or empty. There would be nothing over here, just bedrock. Further down, Solomon put his palace. We have the city gates over here. There was a citadel which Solomon would have put. All right, but that would be a little bit further down at the place which would be called the Ophel, and that's today located beyond the southern walls of the temple. Solomon's temple would have stood where we are right now. How did it look like? Just walk a bit in. That would show you the perimeter of the temple that Solomon built. Here, between the arches all the way around you. This is the platform where we are right now. All right? If you'd like to know where we have bedrock from where we don't have bedrock, look at the opening of the cisterns. Wherever you have an opening of a cistern, that means what's below it is empty, vacant. Where I'm standing, more or less, already the beginning of bedrock over here. Perhaps bedrock from where I'm standing will be around 1 or 2 feet below. All right? But you can see all the arches surrounding us being on the platform where we are. Now, coming all the way up to the temple itself, if you remember that model which I described for you earlier, there where the arches are, we used to have a gate called Nicanor Gate. That's of course the name given to it at the time of Christ. But the description I'm giving you, that applies for the temple which was built by Solomon, for that which was rebuilt by Ezra, and the same one of course that Jesus knew, refurbished by Herod the Great, correct? So, over there stood a Nicanor Gate, 14 steps leading into a court below it, where we used to have the women's court. Let me remind you, that's how far women could get in. Now, where you are standing, and just all along this area, we used to have small altars. Where the black dome is, that's actually more or less where the altar would have stood. And the golden dome, it is occupying the space which was occupied 2,000 years ago by the Holy of the Holies. That's underneath the dome, directly underneath the dome, that's where we have the rock, which is irregular in shape, around 20 square foot, which was occupied by the inner part of the Holy of the Holies. So the complex which we call Holy and Holy of the Holies would have stood over there, of course with a curtain which would have separated the most inner place from the outer place. The most inner place, that's a place where the Ark of the Covenant would have been. As Pastor Don would have said the other day, you know, the Israelites, they took God and put him in a box, right? All right, that box actually would have been over there, the dwelling place of God. Notice one thing, Gentiles were not allowed to come where you are. The courts down there, the Gentiles were allowed to come up to it, because that is not the temple. Like the Wailing Wall, the walls of that Wailing Wall, that's not the walls of the temple. That's the retaining wall of the exterior walls of the platforms which were added by Herod the Great. Because the Holy of the Holies, like this building, has 160 pounds of pure gold on the top. The Holy of the Holies had also a lot of gold on the top of it, plus the gold which was within it. Take the menorahs which were made of pure gold, for instance. When Rome set it on fire, all that gold melted. That Rome destroyed Jerusalem because of the money which was at the temple, because of the gold which was at the temple, because they needed that money in Rome. So the Romans come and literally, they dismantle the Holy of the Holies. They would not leave a stone on another. You're on bedrock. You don't have foundations. They did not leave a stone on another. And yes, today when you come to look at the temple, look at the platform where you are, I cannot point for you not even one single stone from the temple of Jerusalem which stood over here 2,000 years ago, as a stone would be not left on another. Now, for a minute, close your eyes And try to imagine a mother by the name of Mary, a father or stepfather by the name of Joseph, carrying a baby, 40 days old, and they're following up the laws of Judaism. They're bringing, notice one thing, they're bringing their firstborn child. What's the importance of the firstborn child? Only the firstborn child would be meant for sacrifice. If Jesus was not the firstborn child, he wouldn't be sacrificed. He would not be that ultimate sacrifice. They carry the child, they bring him all the way up to the temple, and of course Joseph is not a wealthy man, so he goes all the way to the shops, which used to be south. He buys what we call the sacrifice of the poor, which is a pair of doves. And folks, now try to imagine for a minute, there's right now the women's court down there. You can see the tips of the olive trees. Behind it, that's where the beautiful gate stood. Mary, Joseph, and the child are standing beyond that gate. It's dark, sun is not out yet. The gate's open. Mary and Joseph, they step in. They're carrying the child. Down at the court over there, they're met by an old lady by the name of Anna. Mary, of course, would not be able to cross that gate over here called the Nicanor, so Joseph would carry the child. He would come into the courts over here with the sacrifices at hand, and that's where they would meet Simeon the elder, who would receive the child. With the child, he would venture into this area and then do the sacrifice for the sake of the newly born child. That is the first time that Jesus enters the temple at the age of 40 days. And then, of course, when we come to talk about Jesus' ministry, yes, all his ministry around Jerusalem would be between the Mount of Olives, which is there, and the Temple Mount, and not Jerusalem. One time Jesus comes up to the temple. Okay, he went all the way down to the ground, and he started writing on the floor. Of course, we don't know what he wrote. Okay, we don't know what he wrote, but he did write on the floor about his authority, from where he got it. You know what that symbolized when he goes on and he writes with his finger? What was written by the finger of God? The Torah, right? So Jesus going all the way down on his knees and writing with his finger, he's literally telling them, I am God. Some of you were asking, what about the rebuilding of the third temple? And Jesus said, I can knock that temple and rebuild it in 3 days. He is the new temple. He is the temple. That's why yesterday I called the womb, which carried him, as the new Ark of the Covenant. Because when Jesus died on the cross, God abandoned this place, left it. Remember the curtain which was torn from top to bottom? Today, if you go to the Jewish traditions, they would tell you the only reason that the Western Wall was not demolished by the Romans is because God moved and dwelt there. Hey, wait a minute. God did not move and dwell there. God abandoned this place and moved to dwell among us everywhere. All right? Because simply enough, he is the new temple. And what about the third temple? Listen, prophecies are not clear. Let's say there will be a third temple. But even if there will be a third temple, so what? It will be destroyed anyway. Because Revelation 22 will talk about a new temple, the new Jerusalem to come down from heaven, and that's what counts. But Jesus acts at the temple over here. It's awesome. I mean, the way he comes describing it. I mean, try to imagine for a minute. The exterior part of the Holy of the Holies over there was decorated with vines. He says, I am the true vine. He comes over here for the Feast of the Jews, which we call Tabernacle. They used to go down to the Pool of Siloam and the Gihon Spring, about 1,500 feet down the hill from where we are. They used to carry the water to pour it and wash the temple, to wash the altars. Jesus stands and watching up that act from where you're standing right now, he says, I am the living water. He comes over here for the Feast of the Jews in winter. We read that in John, chapter 9 and 10. The feast, by the way, that Jesus comes to, it's called the Feast of Hanukkah, the Feast of Lights, which is not a biblical feast. That's when the Jews celebrate the rededication of the temple after cleansing it from the hands of the Greeks. On that day, they used to take the menorahs out of the temple, and they used to put it on the stairway down there. And Jesus would stand and say, I am the light of the world. All the I ams that I know about was actually what took place where you are right now. Jesus standing and simply enough claiming in Jerusalem that he is God. And for that, several times they almost took him and stoned him. And there's a lot more. Take Luke 19 to 21. All of that, you can put it just at the entrance where you came from. Because that's where we used to have the court of Solomon at. That's why for me it's quite important to bring the groups up here, because his ministry in Jerusalem, it's centered where you are standing right now and around the court of the temple.